Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of INOCON. My name is Lydia Netterville, and I will be hosting this panel on visualizing bass music with Ben Cantil and Zebbler of the Zebbler and Encanti experience. I would like to take a quick moment to thank the organizers of INOCON for putting this together. I know they have a really great program in store for all of you. Just a note for the audience, should you have questions during the panel, please leave them in the question box, and I will return at the end for a bit of Q&A. I will now introduce our speakers before turning the floor over to them. Ben Encanti Cantil is one half of Zebbler Encanti Experience, or Z, an audio-visual project featuring his music with projection-mapped visualizations by VJ Zebbler. Ben Cantil is currently on sabbatical, taking a year away from his electronic music classes at Berklee, Valencia. As an educator, Ben approaches electronic music creation as a multidisciplinary art form that unifies traditional songwriting with sound design, arranging, and audio engineering. Zebbler Peter Brodowski is an internationally touring live visual artist and the founder of Zebbler Studios, who is known for his video mapping work and concert projections. Zebbler first gained worldwide fame for the 2007 Boston Moonanite Panic and subsequent news conference. His first Spangletron design earned him recognition as one of the first VJs to incorporate 3D video mapping into his set designs. For the past decade, Zebbler has also been busy performing with his audiovisual-based music act Z, Zebbler and Encanti Experience. In addition to his visual works, Zebbler is also an accomplished educator. He is currently working as an assistant professor at Berklee College of Music in Boston, as well as leading a variety of worldwide video performance and mapping workshops. Thank you both for being here today, and without further ado, I would like to welcome the Zebbler and Encanti Experience.
So what you just saw was Zebbler performing a solo Zebbler Encanti experience concert at an event called Industry Strong, which was about a week or two after lockdown happened. A couple of our friends in the industry got together and decided to have a fundraiser concert online for artists that had been affected by COVID-19. And at that point, I was already out of the country. I'm living in the UK right now. And Zebbler, he went and did the show himself, and they set up production like they were doing a festival there. You can see there's a big LED screen behind them, and then put on a great show doing a Z set alone. So what we wanted to do today is talk a little bit about where the Z project came from and how we do what we do. And I'll get started by just kind of giving you a little history. Zebbler Encanti experience. Well, me and Zebbler met back in 2006, I want to say, right when I was graduating Berklee College of Music in Boston. And Zebbler was doing a show at Mass Art. And at the time, VJing was not that big of a thing. And I went into Mass Art and I saw this projection that was 3 projectors wide, really crazy stuff, really weird. And I was totally blown away and floored. And I just said, I want to get involved with this artist. And we ended up working together and really clicking and becoming really good friends. And we've been working together ever since. I guess that means 13 years.
Can I tell them the Firefly story? It was kind of crazy.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
You know, the same way you met me and you were kind of impressed. I was really impressed by you then. I was running a small Burning Man camp at this regional burn called Firefly. And I literally created a surround sound installation there. And I had a solo performance on the first night. But on the second night, I literally scheduled myself as a VJ, but didn't schedule any audio artists there, thinking I am going to find somebody in the woods here who could perform with my visuals. And I literally bumped into Ben walking through the woods with a Mac tower strapped to his back. He had it in a sling over his shoulder. And I said, hey, can you improvise and perform in surround sound? He said, hell yeah. And here we are.
Yeah. And I didn't have a MacBook back then. In order to do surround sound, needed my tower. So when we started back then, it was DJing with VJing. I was playing other people's tracks, and then my music at the time was kind of weird. So our original stuff started as interstitials. We would be playing like dance floor stuff, and then we'd go into like a artsy direction. And I believe the first Z shows were in like art galleries. We played at the Museum of Science in San Francisco. I think that was the first time that we were booked as Zebbler Encanti experience. And over time, as I became more and more influenced by the dance music I was listening to, we became a full-on original, original audio and visual dance music act. And for a while, for a long time, until this year, it was just all about live shows and touring and creating an experience for people. We had met in the middle of Firefly and middle of shows, and I just felt like the experience of being at a show, getting the music and the visuals and the lighting and the environment was really quintessential to the art that we were trying to make, not just separating them as, oh, this is music and visuals. We're trying to make an experience. So that's what we wanted to talk a little bit about for you today, how we put this experience together. I'll get started, and let me try to do a screen share. Let's see. Here we go. All right, everyone see it? You see it, Zeb?
Yeah, looks good.
All right. So this is our Z set that we use live, and those of you that are familiar with Ableton, you're probably looking at it saying, hey, where's all those missing files? This project folder normally lives on our performance laptop, which Zebbler is on right now in Boston. But this has evolved over the years. We've basically added to the same project file. And let me explain a little bit how this works. This is basically a DJ set. We got channel A and channel B, and then another channel, kind of some random channels right here. But A and B you can consider as our CDJs. These are our 2 turntables. And I just put fully mastered and mixed tracks of mine in here. And we mix back and forth between channels just like a DJ would. And these 2 channels output into a DJM 900 mixer, which I'm surprised a lot of people don't know, that the 900 mixer can be used as an audio interface. So you can output an Ableton track, as many, up to 4 different stereo Ableton tracks into one CDJ or DJM mixer. And basically, once it's going through the mixer, you have the volume control, you have the EQ, all of that stuff is on the mixer. And even though I love Ableton, I think that the DJM, the EQ and the volume on the DJM just sounds really, really good. So to cue these tracks over here, you see that we also have a channel here called Video MIDI. And over here in the master channel, this is where we cue the videos and the tracks together as one scene. Now, this started as, the original setup was Zebbler would basically make a music video or a visual track for a song I was working on. And then all we have to do is hit play on both of them at the same time. And this will be playing the track. And all that this MIDI channel does is it sends a single MIDI note to Resolume. And you can see it's a tiny note down here, just boop. And all that this does is it sends a note to Resolume that plays a clip, which we'll show a little bit later on. And over time, we realized that we were totally not utilizing all of Resolume. The fact that you can play a clip in Resolume with just a MIDI note means that you can use Resolume kind of like a, you can use it kind of like a drum machine. You know, you can have a couple of different visuals that you cue on time with the music. So over time, we started experimenting with, instead of doing like a freestyle DJ set like you would in the session view here, we started doing everything in the arrangement view. And over here, we were able to experiment with tracks like this. This is the MIDI track for our tune Outside the Box. Here we have different channels of MIDI notes being triggered, and each one is either triggering a very short video or an effect. So as the track progresses, we can move through different videos and move through different effects that emphasize that scene. And over here, we have a really crazy glitchy moment. You can see that we got a lot of different videos playing. And with other tracks, it's very sparse. And then Zebbler will take the lead and add effects and add visuals as he goes. So I guess you can say we've where we can really jam with audio visuals. It's not just MIDI coming from live that we rely on to play our visuals. Sometimes it's a Zebbler, which he'll show. It's him using a MIDI controller. Sometimes it's audio reactive. We really try to lean on every way that you could control visuals. So the track that you just saw is the end of this tune, the Fly remix of Entrance. By the way, Fly was a Berklee student named Nassim Silver who remixed our tune Entrance. That goes out into the original version of Entrance, which is playing right here. And to start that off, it's just one MIDI note that starts all the action. And then all of the blinking that you saw in that last video on the LED screen, all of the transitions were actually done live by Zebbler with a Q Neo MIDI controller, which is small and light enough for him to hold in his hand. And I think without further ado, let's show him the Resolume portion of this, Zebbler. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Right. So I'm going to share my entire screen just so you see what's going on everywhere. I might go into the preferences here. I love this predictable feedback that happens with all of it. But here we are. So this is the kind of the guts of the set that you see in here. Ben, can you see me on the screen, by the way, too? Because I want to show my MIDI controller too.
Yeah, I can see you.
So this particular track, honestly, is the funnest track for me to do live. And it's precisely because I have so much control over what's happening with the visuals. all of these things are kind of dialed in by me and are controlled by the audio volume, but also controlled by me smashing these buttons. So as you can see, just one button right here does some amazing stuff to this. And if there was really loud music playing, there would be a whole bunch of other stuff happening at the same time too. So let me break down how this whole thing is set up, because it's a little tricky. And I'm gonna skip on explaining anything, but I will just tell you how it works inside Resolume. So as Ben has mentioned, there's a single MIDI note that gets sent to Resolume that triggers a bunch of samples. But Ben, you may want to pay attention to this too, because this is a little tricky past that point. So I think that one MIDI note triggers maybe 2 of these samples, which we have a feedback layer, and we have this, I'll fade it out, and I'll fade this out. So we have these flashing symbols here, and if I stay really quiet, they'll pretty much disappear. Right? They're kind of grayed out. But as soon as I talk, as soon as I'm louder, these flashing symbols start getting brighter. And that's because I have an audio effect on the opacity of this channel that's picking up audio from my microphone in this case. Right? So in a live situation, every bass note that hits kind of illuminates it a little brighter. Now, if I turn feedback on, because these white shapes are on alpha, they have no background. It seems like it's black, but over here on the bottom, you can actually see that checkerboard transparency grid, which means it's on alpha. It's a transparent thing. Things on alpha work incredibly good with feedbacks. So Resolume has this native feedback that all it does, it kind of iterates the same image over and over again. But in the process, we grow it in size, and we grow it in size also with audio controls. So every time I say something, the feedback gets bigger, right? So you're kind of seeing that now. And I also have an invert effect on the feedback, which inverts it. And then I have another invert effect on my MIDI controller here. So when I press this one, the result is actually this really cool draggy kind of disappearance trick. And I just really love doing that, because it allows me to punch to the music in real time. And because of how fast these frames are flashing, every single time, and there's a different image there. Nothing is repeated. Everything is super different. And the only thing, and this is where you should probably take a note, Ben, because this really, really helps. I noticed that it really helps to seed a little bit of color in there. So I picked a random clip here called Monster Mandala 08, also on alpha, also with a transparent background. And I just turn it up just ever so slightly, so you can't really notice it. But that just creates much more interesting shapes to me because of those color punches inside of it. So that's basically what it is. I have a whole lot of other effects on my MIDI controller here. They're all really fun. So for me, I think in this particular track, I've achieved something that I've been wanting to do for so long, which is I'm really literally feeling like I'm performing with visuals when I'm on stage. And it's so rhythmic, it's so punchy, it's so bright. I just, it's probably my favorite part of the set right now, just because of how live it is and how much control it gives me as a VJ on stage.
Cool, and I think that now's a pretty good time if we want to do a Q&A. If anyone's got questions. You over there. How about you?
Do we have any audience questions? I can see some people typing.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Great question. Yeah,
Well,
if you'd like to ask your question yourself, let me know. Just say yes or no in the chat box, and we will pull you on stage.
I have a question for the cat.
Ryan, would you like to come on stage?
Oh, the second invert on the feedback is volume controlled. Is that true, Zeb?
No. Invert on feedback is not volume controlled. It's just a constant. The second invert on feedback is button controlled. So that's the second feedback. Sorry, second invert I just do with my fingers. Ryan's is asking a question in the question sections.
Hey, hello. Can you guys? Hey, thanks so much. Sorry, I was putting my headphones back on when I think you were talking about your controller and the second inverted.
Oh, I was just saying that the invert is not controlled by audio. It's controlled. It's just constant. But the second invert, there are two inverts, is controlled by my button. So I can just press that button for the second invert, and that's the thing that makes everything kind of disappear into infinity and freezes it. It's like a freeze frame disappear act.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's a good one. We got a good one by Zach Lightman too. Do you feel the video clips affect what you're playing and the music you write? And if so,
also,
how?
I want to give a shout out to everyone who's actually asking questions in the question section, because there are a lot of them, and that's where you should be asking them.
Oh.
And I think we should prioritize everybody who is doing things correctly.
Oh, okay. I just noticed the question section myself.
All right. So let me take the first one. It got voted up. How much of the visuals rely on audio reactivity in the set? It's a mixed bag. I think at this point we have a lot of audio reactive stuff just because it's fun. But we also contain a lot of visual tracks that are pre-composited and pre-rendered that look really, really audio reactive, but they're actually pre-rendered. And we kind of like that ambivalence where people don't quite know if stuff is live or not, because we do split it kind of almost 50-50, where some tracks are fully audio reactive and fully live, and some tracks are fully pre-recorded, and you never know which one is what.
I think we have Lisa's question with 4 upvotes right there. How valuable do you find the combination of audio and visuals for pitching your act to festivals?
Yeah, let me say one thing first. I think for a while there was this hook I could have done, and it's still kind of happening, where I am kind of known as a visual artist. I've been working with the Yodo, Spangle, a bunch of big acts, just designing video map stages for them. And because of that, a lot of festivals wanted to get me on their roster as a visual artist. And it was just an easier way for us to get in there as a bass duo as well that way. I'm actually finding this project to be my favorite thing in the world right now. So you know, that the kind of the novelty of being invited to be a visual artist and then sneaking your bass act in has worn off, and I just want to do Z now full on. But it does help specifically for those festivals that have really good visual production, right? So when we played Walk On Fest, they knew what we were up to, and they gave us a really sick LED wall to perform on. And that's the thing that really blows people away. You know, every single act before us had a different VJ, right? So their visuals were cool, but not locked in with the music. So when you have a giant LED wall on stage, just turn on and act completely in sync with the music, I think that just adds so much value to that festival. It adds so much value to people's experience of what's happening. It's a whole other level. So I do think people appreciate it.
Yes.
But we're also always fighting with people who don't fully know what we're about. And And that's a whole other thing. As a VJ, I've been tormented so hard by, you know, someone who's like, oh, you have a VJ in your act too? He can sit in the corner over there and VJ on that TV, you know.
And can we use all your projectors? And could you sit at front of house? You know, you get everything.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going with more questions.
Okay, this one's getting upvoted a lot. What if I did start live answer? Okay. When performing, are you primarily working in arrangement view or session view? I'm most curious if it's linear or a bit more improvised. We've done both. In the last 2 years, we've moved a lot more to arrangement view because you can get really close to the music and say, you know, on these 16th notes, I want these kinds of visual things to happen. And you can, the way you approach the composition can become a lot more nuanced and detailed. A part of me who is a DJ, I really like the improvisational element, and I don't like the idea of being like a pre-recorded set guy. But the truth is that those tracks are coming out onto the DJM mixer, and I'm still doing the mixing all live. And I could actually probably also answer another question, which is, do you have one MIDI controller that handles everything, and do you have one for each software? Basically, I work really hard on the music myself, and once it's done, there's not that much stuff I want to do to it other than to mix it with the next track and work the EQs on the mixer. So that's not a MIDI controller. That's just real EQs and real volume and stuff. And then I want effects on it. And honestly, I just really love the effects on the DJM mixer. So I don't really use a MIDI controller in Ableton Live unless I'm doing a fully improvised set, in which case I'm just queuing what scene I want to go next. It's Zebbler who has the big MIDI controller in this act, and he's rocking that Q Neo.
And I just want to touch on this real quick too. I think switching to arrangement view allowed us to much more easily do solo sets. Because honestly, there is so much stuff still flying inside of our set that it does get a little overwhelming sometimes. So being able to control what you want to do live versus what's kind of pre-done for you and pre-sequenced has been a true blessing, because I am still really busy on stage. I still have so many cues to follow with my visuals. So to be able to do both audio and video that way has been awesome for us. Should we answer the how do we practice question?
What's up, Lee? Practicing has always been kind of it's been something that we need to set aside time for. But basically, me and Zebbler are separated by the oceans most of the time. And most of the time we're working in tandem with one another, but to actually practice, normally before we go on tour, if we're lucky, we get 2 or 3 days to set up everything and just
we
practice,
also have our own
before
video
going out
map
there.
stage too, called the Ziggurat, and over the last few years it kind of evolved and it became a pretty impressive piece. It's a 3 projection winged stage, custom built with LEDs embedded into it and an LED table, and all of the LEDs are drawing colors straight from the visuals. So the whole thing is kind of a monstrous thing. We used to tour with it, and for that kind of stuff, you know, ideal situation is we just set it up at the loft here where I live in Boston, and we have a few days to rehearse on it before we pack it up into a box and start our tour.
I think we have Ankit's question down there about how much of the visuals rely on audio reactivity in the set. I
think we answered that though.
Yeah, it's mixed, you know, and I think that Zebbler, there's sometimes where you can turn up the audio reactivity on something, right? That's like a variable.
Yeah, so we have the sensitivity slider, which is pretty easy. You can control which frequencies are controlling what, like whether or not we're bass, highs, or mids. There's sliders for that. And a lot of stuff we can just add audio reactivity to on the fly if we want to. But it's about, I would say it's about 40-60 or so. 40% of it has some kind of live interactive stuff, and 60% of the visuals are actually fairly sectioned into pre-recorded sections, kind of like DJing with music videos.
Managing latency.
Yeah, that's a really good question,
uh,
and I think it's a good question because people don't even know how good of a question it is. So basically, we perform everything off of one laptop. And that allowed us, strangely enough, to limit the latency because the signals don't have to travel through cables. They just go through a virtual MIDI network from Ableton to Resolume. So there's generally minimal feedback, minimal delay. And our machine is getting a little old. I think updating it for the next tour would be a good idea. And that's going to make things go even faster. However, where it gets to be a good question is sometimes we run into festivals or venues that have LED walls or projectors that are just through a bunch of cables, a bunch of hardware, and then that starts adding video delay. And that gets pretty bad sometimes. So what Ben has done is, Ben, do you want to explain this bit about delaying MIDI notes?
Right. Inside of Ableton Live, you have delays in each channel. So a lot of the time, if there's a significant but predictable delay on the visuals, I'll actually delay the audio so it lines up better with the visuals. And that's all stuff that we have to assess at sound check on a show-by-show basis, especially, as Zebbler said, at festivals or at shows that have their own visual infrastructure, because you never know if you're just going to go in and they're going to try to hand you a VGA cable with all these different attachments.
But that's been actually really helpful
here.
Because Ableton can delay sending MIDI notes or delay the audio, right?
One or the other, depending on what you need. But you can delay any track.
And so Ben has been able to actually delay the audio and send the MIDI notes a little before their time, and that ends up kind of solving our problem time to time.
Yeah.
I think that is our time for the session.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for showing up. Thank you for asking us good questions. This has been really fun. Keep going. Learn more stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, make awesome stuff. Thank you, INOCON. Thank you, Berklee. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.